Now it is about what to pay attention, or what the components or signs and symptoms for a couple each, when a person is analyzing at home that the person is right. First of all, the person that is from afar in mind, being once met or not, source of being well-being, so joy and love, as long or as soon as even an unique body imprint for 1 second blinks in person's memory, and as long as that person is identified as self and self identified by that person, that brings joy and brings love. So that is what it causes, that for two in mind fantasizing about that person in person brings joy to see that person and have that person have more chance to have a relationship. That is then in person that the other one has to want sexual and loving relationship, and that is described from the first moment to later on as pursuit of one another in delight, meaning if that person, for instance, expresses characteristics of the other, that person rejoices in it, so it's shown a smile, for instance. If that person repeats the same word, the other one rejoices in it. There is much more to that person who moves towards a more sexual, explicit way in the direction toward being that a declaration of sexual interest causes sexual arousal and love and gratefulness, and that is because the other person loves that person and leads to having same happening, and in reciprocity building of that relationship. When persons meet, the contrasting of in mind relationship to relationship in person, the best chances to have a lasting relationship is when in person the two, in dynamic correlation, feel that the desire in self has as source the other person. That's one. So source of the desire is that very person, not association, not behavior per se, not sexual arousal, but source is how that person looks like and how that person behaves like. And then the second one, so that is from being a nice to being frankly unable to not touch that person or kiss that person, or it is very difficult. And that is to the reciprocity, to observe that the other person feels the same way, causes joy and causes also the same degree of infatuation in person from person. So persons being at work are not able, they struggle to sustain the same degree of professionalism or work. That person also that is performing duties struggles to do so because that person wants and loves the other, not because that person is disturbed or harassed by the other. It's very different. And person given chance, person wishes to abandon the whatever it is that the activity is and pursue companion and personal relationship, and it is mutual. So that from first, regardless of circumstances, from first moment has greatest basis to know that if it in mind it continues, then that is possible that next time when met or a person is asked to go out or do something together, that the person will rejoice as best thing ever and run for it to do so. So the second component is enchantment. Enchantment is something that is a declaration of love, meaning the way that those persons look like, think or looking at one another, it often is manifested in ondulation of air similar to heat around person's body that is mutual and described as out of a sudden that person seems an unearthly beautiful or source of adoration, and that leads to religious almost adoration of personal physics and looks and it is shared, it's mutual. So that is what makes the other say, I could pray to you because you are this beautiful. I cannot believe that you exist. That is such the infatuation, and no other shares that emotion because it is mutual. People observe it. That's all. That enchantment lasts and is associated with goodness and intentionality of looks and pursuit of the other person, and vice versa. The other one behaves and looks like that, not because the person wants to display that partner, but because that person wants to have the same role as an adult partner, to have the two parent or being together, building common life together. And that is a particular feeling or emotion in which persons enter this gender specific dynamic in which man behaves as a man and woman behaves as a woman, as most wantingly so, also in public places, and like to be represented as such, as a couple. And it brings joy, and this feeble or wanting that that person, for instance, speaks on behalf of the other because the other one is released, the burdens from certain activities, carries a heavier bag, or the other way around, that a female actually does the opposite, makes and promotes that person to become a man who is well, unlike others, able to provoke femininity and from her masculinity. So masculinity that is a female that is able to promote in that male, uh, that man doing tasks to alleviate that female, and that female doing tasks to alleviate that male. The male no longer wants to cook, she assumes the role of a cook. The male no longer wants to, for instance, or has to uh, care for own health. The female comes up with herbs or does things to alleviate him, and cares for internal design and how the place looks like. And if the profession is shared, the female takes a great chunk of what that male does, and the male rejoices in it as a couple, and vice versa. And that is the dynamic in which the gender specific roles bring pride and niceness and gratefulness. And in a nice community, unless people are not welcomed, the two are then loved because of that. And that is what the dynamic is. I stutter because some persons mistake that with protege relationship, in which a female has adored men for like a deity, and has that person treated as if it was an well, a pope or some other person. That is the emotion in sexual romantic relationship, the same adoration. However, because that is an active role of a man to pursue a female sexually, that man does roles where the female physicality is limited at. So, for instance, when someone has worked 8 hours and got tired, the other one alleviates and says, "How about I take over? Why don't you sit down and rest? Because I still have stamina. I'm a man." And that brings that feeling of being frail and being able to not to have muscles and fight all the time against everything, which is nice. Not necessarily it has to lead to relationship, but it's part of it. If a person who is a road worker is nicer than the whole big shot husband at home, who is such a wonderful person to all, then that person at home is not quite as loved because the other one seems better, and that is not great for relationship. What are other components apart from that? There is sexual surrender. Sexual surrender, I've described, it needs to be mutual, male to female, female to male. Male proposing to a female does not cause gloating. Gloating is only a part. Gloating is pride, but if that male in the proposal does not cause in that male sexual arousal because that male is feeble. Sexual drive, meaning a man who is actually pursued than to have children, is because that man is weaker or humbler, is pursued sexually, to kiss, to love, to make love to. That does not mean that it's not inappropriate to cry or be touched, but it means that if it never happens, then that woman was sexually at some point, in fact or in but rejected by that very man, not by any man. And that is in both directions. It needs to be mutual. Excuse me. Another so we have enchantment, sexual surrender, sexual drive, that is mutual. Sexual drive. And then what else did I saw? I don't miss. Manifestations of womanhood I described to cause that the surrender. Manhood is in goodness. Anything that causes pain or is meant to win one and others, or when that one does not, maybe some others, or is meant to just be maybe if she likes in fear of rejection, that is not does not provoke the same degree of surrender and impression. So sexual manhood needs to be in goodness, impressive, be it at work and outside of work, and work is not used as an excuse, because a courageous person is one that is able to declare on love and pursue it. And that is the source of sexual surrender, and that man displays it because that man wants that woman to be his wife and shows to this look what it is like to be loved. That is how it looks, and this is going to be my wife, and that is what I cause. Does not look at a female and ridicules her or ditches her somewhere because she was impressed by him, and moving to another person available, questioning non-stop if it was him or not, or if he is good enough, because that causes harm to that female, who is then as if marked and others attack, or well, in it ends relationship. So that it's clear, relationships end and are not lifelong when there is lack of pursuit, or there is an index, suffering, pain caused to one another, that ends that relationship. So that is very important to know. Then there is a sexual act. Sexual act consists of, after sexual surrender, having the two persons from mind to body, the arousal of that person in sexual orgasm, source of in being in love, to have the other as the source of adoration for a gender specific role. So motherhood or fatherhood, adoration to uterus from that one man, and the genitals bowing or prostrating to it, feeling in that sense, the need to worship or to spoil or to give luxury, and vice versa, adoration to masculinity as goodness. Mi bien in songs that the women sing in Spanish often, or in Polish as well, of a man who is so good and so masculine that he would not a fly harm, never would he would prefer be dead than leave alone or neglect the beloved woman, and does not condition upon that love on goodness. On the contrary, does not expect sexuality to be good, wants it and trusts that with own behaviors he is worthy and source of dignity, not in anger. Dignity means if that person is causing sexual arousal or love, that person wants it because that person worked for it and knows to recognize it and pursues it. And that is not to benefit than others, because that is betrayal to do so, to leave a woman who one was trying to woo to other males, to leave that woman into loyalty to others, other males, or leave that woman to alone, to be then expecting faithfulness while not pursuing, because that causes diseases and also crimes. Persons defend self without the other wanting to do so, accusing of violence, which is very common in the United States, and it's really outrageous, frankly. This is a long topic, how many couples then are ending that way.